When you wake up in the morning, before the demands of the day begin to pull at your heart and mind, before the rush of noise and responsibility sets in, there is one place your soul needs to begin: in the presence of God. Psalm 142 is not just a passage of Scripture, it is a window into the soul of a man who found himself at his lowest point. David, a man after God's own heart, cried out these words not from a palace, not from a place of comfort or confidence, but from a cave. That's where this psalm was written. From the depths of a dark, damp, lonely cave, as David was fleeing for his life. He was physically isolated, emotionally overwhelmed, and spiritually desperate, yet in that place he turned his heart toward the Lord. Start your day knowing this: God understands the cave you're in. Maybe your cave isn't made of stone or dirt. Maybe it's made of unanswered questions, silent suffering, or a heart weighed down by grief. Maybe it's the pressure of responsibilities you never asked for, or fears about a future that feels uncertain. David began Psalm 142 with this: I cry aloud to the Lord, I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. He didn't whisper. He didn't mumble a polite prayer. He cried aloud. He lifted up his voice. Because when you're in the cave, you need more than routine religion. You need to connect with the only one who truly sees and hears you. David wasn't afraid to express his emotion before God. He wasn't putting on a spiritual front. He said, I pour out before him my complaint. Before him I tell my trouble. That's how you begin your day. Not pretending to have it all together. Not rushing into the day with a forced smile, but by pouring out your complaint to the one who can actually do something about it. Some of us start our mornings by checking messages, emails, or scrolling through the headlines, and before we know it, our spirit is burdened with anxiety or pressure. But David shows us another way, a place. He didn't start with the noise of the world. He started with the honesty of prayer. There's something powerful that happens when you wake up and choose to open your heart before the Lord, not with rehearsed phrases or distant words, but with real, unfiltered honesty. That's what God desires. He doesn't want you to hide your confusion or bottle up your sadness to a place. He already knows the depth of your struggle, but He wants you to trust Him enough to speak it out. And when you do that, when you begin your day by crying out, by lifting your voice, by confessing your weakness, you're not just venting emotion, you are engaging in spiritual surrender. You're inviting God into your cave. This world offers 1,000 solutions to quiet the anxiety of a troubled soul, but only one will meet you in the darkness and lead you into the light. God is not offended by your cave. He's not put off by your questions or weariness. In fact, that's where He does some of His deepest work. The cave may feel like a place of defeat, but in God's hands, it becomes a place of preparation, where faith is tested, but also where it grows. And that's why starting your day with Psalm 42 is so critical. It resets your soul. It reminds you that you're not alone. It places your pain in the hands of the only one who can bring you through it. So before the day demands your attention, before you try to find strength in your own effort, take a moment. Go to the Lord with honesty. Cry out. Lift your voice. Pour out your complaint. Let your first conversation be with the one who already knows the shape of your cave and who is committed to walking you out of it. When David opened his heart to God in Psalm 14:2, he wasn't concerned with sounding spiritual or polished. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, not even God. He simply prayed with honesty. He said, I pour out before Him my complaint. Before Him I tell my trouble. That's what real prayer looks like. It's not about following a formula. It's about being real. That's the kind of prayer that touches the heart of God. And if we're going to start our day with strength and clarity, mimic a place, we need to begin with that kind of honest prayer. There's something freeing about knowing you don't have to filter yourself when you talk to God. You don't need to pretend. You don't need to minimize your pain or dress up your struggles with religious language. God isn't asking you to be strong when you're feeling weak. He's inviting you to come as you are. David didn't hide his pain. He poured it out. He laid it bare. That's how he began his day in the cave, by refusing to carry the weight alone. Too often, we start our mornings by suppressing what's really going on in our hearts. We feel pressure to move on, to act like everything is fine, to be productive. But God never asked us to fake it. He asked us to seek Him. And when you come to Him in the quiet moments of the morning, when the day is still fresh and your mind is still clear, that's the perfect time to pray. Not with pretense, but with truth. David teaches us something powerful, that God is not just the one who delivers us from trouble. He's also the one who listens to us in the middle of it. You may not have answers yet. You may still be sitting in a dark cave of confusion or sorrow. But prayer is not just about getting answers. It's about building trust. Every honest word you speak to God is a step deeper into His presence. And every time you choose to talk to Him before you talk to anyone else, you are declaring with your actions, Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself. You may feel like your prayers are too messy, too emotional, too unspiritual, but those are the prayers God welcomes most. He's not looking for performance. He's looking for your heart. Think about it. David didn't begin his day with confidence. He began it with a complaint. But even that was an act of faith. It was his way of saying, God, you're the only one who can handle this. That kind of honesty builds relationship. It strengthens your soul. It opens the door for God's peace to enter the places where your spirit is most restless. When you pray honestly, you're not being negative, you're being faithful. You're saying, Lord, this is where I am, but I believe you are with me here. And that shifts everything. It takes your focus off the cave and places it back on the God who walks with you through it. It reminds you that you don't have to manage your emotions alone. You don't have to solve every problem before you can speak. You can start the day by surrendering it. So when the morning comes and your thoughts begin to stir, don't rush past the H in your heart. Don't silence the questions that rise up. Instead, take them to the one who already knows they're there. Speak to Him plainly. Pour out your complaint. Tell Him your trouble. And as you do, you'll find that the very act of prayer becomes the place where your spirit is restored, where your peace is renewed, and where your strength begins to rise, not because the cave is gone, but because God is there with you in it. David continues in Psalm 142 by saying, When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. That simple sentence holds a deep truth. Sometimes the most powerful place you can begin your day is in the quiet acknowledgement that you don't have the strength to face it alone. David wasn't just burdened, he was overwhelmed. He felt trapped, surrounded, forgotten. And yet, even in that broken state, he turned to the Lord and admitted something we often struggle to say, I can't do this by myself. There is something deeply humbling about recognizing your own powerlessness, especially first thing in the morning. We live in a world that pushes us to wake up and take control, to plan, to push, to produce. But when you begin your day in God's presence, you learn to say something far more honest. Lord, I don't know what this day holds, and I don't trust my own strength to carry me through it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And that's where true dependence on God begins. David wasn't ashamed to admit he didn't have it together. He said, "Look and see. There is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life." Those are heavy words. And yet, they are preserved in Scripture to remind us that even the most faithful followers of God can feel isolated and forgotten. Maybe you've had mornings like that. Mornings when it feels like the weight of your responsibilities is too heavy. Mornings when no one seems to understand the burden you're carrying. Mornings when your soul feels tired before the day even begins. But it's in those very moments when your spirit is overwhelmed that God steps in and says, "I know your path." Before you take a single step, He already sees the road ahead. He knows what obstacles you'll face, what decisions you'll have to make, what conversations will drain you, and what surprises will test your faith. And because He knows, you don't have to. That's why surrender is not defeat, it's divine wisdom. It's the decision to place your day in the hands of the one who already knows where it's going. And when you do that, when you start your day by acknowledging your powerlessness, you make room for God's strength to carry you. Scripture tells us His power is made perfect in weakness. But that promise only becomes real when you're honest about your weakness. There is no shame in saying, "Lord, I can't do this without you." In fact, that's the safest place your soul can be. Because as long as you're trying to rely on your own understanding, your own strength, your own wisdom, you will always come up short. But when you let go, when you lay your day before Him with open hands, you allow His peace to replace your anxiety, His strength to replace your fear, and His presence to replace your loneliness. God doesn't need you to have it all figured out before He can walk with you. He just needs your willingness to trust Him. And that trust begins when you recognize, like David did, that even when your spirit is overwhelmed, even when no one else is around to help, even when your path is uncertain, He knows, He sees, He cares, and He will guide you. So as you begin your day, don't be afraid to admit that you need help. Don't be afraid to confess that you feel powerless. Because when you come to the Lord in that place of surrender, you'll discover that you were never expected to carry the weight alone. God is not watching from a distance. He's walking with you step by step, and His strength will always be enough for the day ahead. As David sat in that dark cave, far from comfort and surrounded by threats, he uttered a simple but powerful truth. "I cry to you, Lord, I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living." In that moment, David made a choice. He stopped looking for safety in people, in places, in his own ability to fix his situation, and he turned his heart fully to God. That decision, to see God as his refuge, was not born from strength, but from deep need. And it's the same choice we must make every morning we wake up and feel the pressures of life waiting at the door. When you open your eyes at the start of a new day, before the world begins to demand your energy, your focus, your time, you have to decide where your refuge is going to be. The world will offer you false places of safety. Your schedule, your finances, your relationships, your accomplishments. But none of those can carry the weight of your soul. Only God can. Only His presence can hold you when everything else is shifting. David didn't just say God was our refuge. He said, "You are my refuge." It was personal. He didn't say, "You might help me." He said, "You are my portion." In other words, you are all I need. That kind of faith doesn't come from theory, it comes from experience. David had lost nearly everything: his position, his comfort, even his sense of security. But even there, in that cave, he discovered the one thing that could not be taken from him: God's presence. That's why beginning your day with Psalm 142 is so powerful. Before the noise and responsibilities take over, before the pressure begins to build, you have a moment to say, Lord, you are my refuge. You are my portion. You are enough for me today. That one declaration can recenter your soul. It reminds you that no matter how uncertain your path may look, God is already ahead of you, surrounding you with His presence. Too often we look to people or circumstances to give us the peace only God can provide. We hope that if everything goes smoothly, we'll feel safe. But real refuge isn't found in the absence of problems. It's found in the nearness of God. David didn't say this after his situation improved. He said it while still inside the cave, which means your peace doesn't have to wait until the problem is solved. You can rest now because your refuge is not a place, it's a person. That changes the way you start your day. It means you don't have to wake up anxious, wondering how you'll make it through. You don't have to scroll through your phone or check the news just to feel secure. You don't have to depend on anyone to validate your worth. You can look to God and say, You are my hiding place. You are my shield. You are my strength. That confession anchors your heart before the winds of the day start to blow. When David called God his portion, he was saying, Even if I don't have anything else today, if I have you, I have enough. That's a powerful truth to hold on to in the quiet of the morning, because it's not about having every answer. It's not about having every need met the way you expect. It's about knowing that you are held by the one who knows your path, hears your cry, and never leaves your side. So before you pick up the weight of the day, pause long enough to declare who your refuge is. Let your first thought be a reminder of who holds your life. Because once your heart is rooted in that truth, no matter what the day brings, you'll walk in the peace that comes from knowing you're already safe in Him. David didn't just pour out his complaint or express his pain. He also asked for direction. In Psalm 142:6-7, he pleaded, Listen to my cry. I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. This wasn't just a cry for comfort. It was a cry for clarity, for guidance, for help to move forward. David wasn't content to remain in his distress. He looked to God to lead him out of it. And if we're going to start our days with purpose and peace, we need to do the same. When the day begins and your mind is fresh and uncluttered, that's the right moment to ask God for direction, not after you've made your own plans, not when things have already started to unravel, but right at the beginning, before you try to figure it all out. Take time to say, Lord, guide my steps today. That's not a small prayer. It's a vital one, because even when your surroundings feel like a cave and your options feel limited, God still sees a path forward that you don't. David admitted something most of us try to avoid, that the problems he faced were too strong for him. That takes humility. That takes faith. It's one thing to ask for help when you think you can still manage on your own. It's another to surrender and say, God, I don't know the way, and I can't make it through this without you. That's where true guidance begins. Not in self-confidence, but in spiritual dependence. There are times when we carry too much because we never asked God to carry it for us. We try to make decisions, solve problems, and keep everything together without ever pausing to say, "Father, show me what to do." And so we begin our days feeling overwhelmed, not because the day is impossible, but because we're trying to handle it without divine direction. David's prayer in the cave reminds us that when we ask for God's guidance, we are inviting His wisdom into our weakness and His clarity into our confusion. God is never silent to a surrendered heart. When you begin your morning with a request for His leadership, you are aligning your spirit with His will. That's not just good for your peace of mind, it's essential for staying on the path He has prepared for you. David said, "Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name." In other words, get me out of this, not just so I can be comfortable, but so I can glorify you. That kind of prayer gets God's attention, because it's not just about escape, it's about purpose. When you start your day asking God to lead, you're saying, "I don't just want to get through this. I want to walk in what you've planned for me." And sometimes that means God will open a door you didn't expect. Other times He'll give you the strength to stand in the place you are. Either way, He promises to be your guide. Proverbs says, "In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." That starts with the first moments of the day. So when the sun rises and the hours ahead feel uncertain, don't rush into the day in your own strength. Take a quiet moment to say, "Lord, guide my steps. Show me where to go. Help me not to lean on my own understanding, but to trust you fully." That one prayer, spoken sincerely in the stillness of morning, can change everything. Because when you let God lead, He will take you where your wisdom never could. And you'll walk through the day, not alone, not confused, but confident that every step has been ordered by the one who loves you and sees far beyond what you can. David ends Psalm 142 not in despair, with hope. He says, "Then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me." This may seem surprising, considering that he's still in the cave, still on the run, still surrounded by problems. But David has shifted his focus. He has gone from desperation to anticipation. He is no longer overwhelmed by what is against him, but confident in what God will do for him. That's the kind of posture you need when you begin your day. Not with anxiety about what might happen, but with faith in what God has already promised. It's easy to wake up with worry. The mind begins racing with all the things that need to be done, all the conversations that might go wrong, all the outcomes that feel uncertain. But if you begin your day with Psalm 142, you are reminded that even in the cave, even in the darkest, most discouraging seasons, God is still working, and His goodness is not limited to your circumstances. It's rooted in His character. David was still waiting for rescue when he declared, "You will deal bountifully with me." That is the voice of faith. That is the heart of someone who has spent time in honest prayer, recognized his powerlessness, declared God as his refuge, and asked for direction. Now, in this final step, he chooses to trust, not because everything is fixed, but because he knows who is in control, and that's what we need as we begin each day. Not a guarantee that everything will go smoothly, but a deep inner assurance that God is with us and He is good. That's why it's not enough to just pour out your complaint or cry for help. You must also lift your eyes in expectation. Expect that God will provide. Expect that God will strengthen you. Expect that God will open doors in His perfect timing. That mindset changes how you face everything that comes after. This final verse shows us that our current cave doesn't determine our final chapter. David envisions a time when the righteous will gather around him, not to mourn his situation, but to witness God's faithfulness. He believes that his story, even the painful parts, will become a testimony. And that's what happens when you let God lead your day. Even if the beginning is marked by confusion or weakness, the end can be full of purpose and praise. Sometimes we rob ourselves of peace simply because we forget who God is in the middle of the struggle. But Psalm 142 brings us back to the center. It reminds us that prayer is not just about relief. It's about relationship. It's about letting God shape our hearts so that even before the rescue comes, we can say, I believe you're going to be good to me. That's the kind of trust that sustains you. Not shallow optimism, but deeply rooted faith in a God who never changes. So when you rise in the morning, don't just ask God to fix your problems. Trust Him to work through them. Trust Him to draw others around you who will see His faithfulness in your life. Trust Him that your present pain will one day become part of someone else's encouragement. David didn't stay in that cave forever. God brought him out, and when He did, David was stronger, wiser, and closer to the Lord than before. You may still be in the middle of your own cave, but start your day with confidence, knowing God sees you, hears you, and has not forgotten you. Begin your morning not with dread, but with the firm belief that He is guiding you toward freedom, toward healing, and toward purpose. Because no matter how things appear right now, God will be good to you, and that goodness will not be hidden. It will be seen, it will be shared, and it will bring glory to His name.